Today we've got a great malicious compliance story all about Jesus. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, cheap beets. Short and fun story, recent story in the last few months, one-time thing so far. Preface, my father and I share horrible handwriting. I have really curdy cursive. My dad's can be worse, and so he'll write in print. So one of the more recent cursive mixed/print written times involved a grocery list where I made a funny, okay, it was a prank, story. I was at the store with this badly written grocery list. My dad was nice enough to break the list down into sections so I didn't have to run department to department. So when I got to the meat department, I saw something written as cheap beet. In actuality, my father had odds are written cheap beef. Translation, go check the manager's special section for whatever's cheap. I don't care, grab it. Still, I called to double check. Dad, hey, did you write cheap beets or cheap? Dad cuts in, sounding half asleep, cutting me off. Huh? What? Listen, I'm in the middle of working on something. You need to pick up whatever I put on the list. I reply, but Dad, I just need to double check. He cuts in. Look, I'm busy. Just either buy what I have on my list and we'll sort it out later. Cue malicious compliance. Okay, Dad. I hang up and decide to have a bit of fun. First thing I do is buy a cheaper cut in the manager's special section, cover my butt so dinner isn't ruined. Then when I'm in the produce section, I look for beets. Guess what? Organic is on sale. I call up Dad again and say, Dad, how many cheap? He cuts me off. Look, either buy 2 or double or guess, okay? Good God. I reply, can you at least tell me if you want organic? He says yes, organically grown or grass-fed is fine. I took everything to the checkout and paid. As I walked in the house to drop off my father's groceries, he starts double-checking it. He replied, hey, where's the… I finally get to cut him off. Right there. I hand Dad the bag of cheap beets. Cue surprised Pikachu face. I tell him, you said everything on the list and guess what? They were cheap. Dad looks at his list, sees his mistaken T for an F and looks at his bag, continuing surprising Pikachu face. We had a good laugh and a few minutes later brought him the real beef. Dad admitted he was actually asleep when I called earlier, so I woke him up mid-nap, half flustered and annoyed. No fallout except I had to find an inventive way to cook beets, but thought the prank to be worth it to slug through one beet dish. Though now Dad checks his list and even walks up to me and says, it's cheap beef, son. He still laughs. Hope someone laughed from this one. This is like a classic Wendy's commercial. Where's the beef? I'd like to know how many people in the comments are petty enough to actually go and buy the beets. I probably wouldn't because I just don't know what to do with a beet. Lazy Fair commented, could have meant earbuds, aka Beats earbuds. Just saying. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of malicious compliance, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is Loyalty Goes Both Ways. I am a worker bee in a company that got bought out by a much bigger company earlier this year. Even though we were a small company, the teams were flexible and everyone helped each other, and the company was profitable. Not to the new ownership though. Apparently our company was crap and needed to be immediately fixed with structure, hierarchy, and order. The managers I've worked so well with over the years are gone. The new owners promise no change. Nothing to worry about, everything will be the same, except that within a month all the experienced managers who made the workplace so great to work for are let go. What is worse, they've been replaced by emotionless walking husks resembling ghosts, with hammers as their only tool and we're all nails. Never mind the incessant preaching of company spirit and loyalty and respect and company values. We all moan at these pep talks, we all yawn at the town halls. Then the less subtle threats. Oh, you're not a team player if you don't do X, Y, and Z. You need to work OT or else that's not fair to everyone else. You're leaving on time? Again? The culture certainly has changed. For one, I didn't even dare to take off early to pick up my kids from school anymore. Finally, the toxic culture of fear and backstabbing. Every word said against the direction, even off the cuff in a chit-chat, and every little facial or nonverbal gesture against the flow are immediately and harshly met with reprimands. For example, another worker bee was recently let go for restructuring despite stellar work performance. He just couldn't keep his thoughts to himself, I guess. I hope I painted a good picture of what life under the iron fist is like. Many of us are contemplating of leaving, but the job market is quite depressing in our area. The cost of living is high and we're afraid of being the neck that sticks out, so everyone suffers in silence. The company recently appointed a new CEO who, in his opening introduction to everyone, demanded undivided loyalty, To him, it means that we must follow his every direction. It means we must smile in his presence and be super upbeat. I think the expectation here is we must cry like North Korean women in the presence of the supreme leader Kim Jong-un. You want absolute loyalty? I believe loyalty goes both ways, but we can show you loyalty. We all got the message. You want us to play Oscar-winning actors and actresses instead of actually getting work done and speaking our minds to make the company better? You got it. For those of us who read and trust each other, but we still need to be careful, we would have hours-long meetings with each other on topics that sound important but actually don't matter. We make sure our days are jammed-packed full of discussions on how to move initiatives forward, but never actually discuss anything of substance and never have aggressive action items to follow up on. We absolutely never forget to praise the leadership in the meeting minutes. Off the books, though, there's lots of small talks for the sake of team building. Whenever we're questioned by these husks of a ghost, we'd pull out a corporate roadmap and point to the initiatives we spent so many hours working on. We would defend our time with the budget that recently got rolled out. Look, we're on side. We've gone so far as requesting additional resources in next year's budget to ensure our very busy initiatives continue to make headway. We're basically creating a public perception of busy without actually doing too much. We were a lean, small company. Now we're a fat, busy body where everything is bloated and compartmentalized. We shut our faces and we nodded. We clapped the hardest after every presidential speeches. And we lost money in the last several months. That's the price we pay to give one-sided loyalty. We're still looking for other jobs. I could imagine this would be fun to kind of maliciously comply with for a while, but once you saddle into the routine of your 9 to 5 being how can I stretch this out and make it look like I'm doing anything when I'm not, you probably get to a point where you do want to try to find another job, even if it's like a lateral or even slightly lower move, just because you don't want your days to be mind-numbingly boring. Imaginary Yak6487 commented, "We have a new compliance team. The head of it sucks so bad. They make changes but don't tell us at site level. We only find out when we send a ticket in to get files approved. Then we, at site level, tell the other site managers. Yesterday, 9/10/24, my boss gets me and 3 other sites in a Teams call. Apparently the head of compliance reamed him out for us 3 not sending a report in 9/3/24. We are all, yes we did, and he was CC'd in the emails like we're supposed to do. We all forwarded our emails to him. He gets off with us to contact them and ask what? Well, they personally never got the emails. Well, no crap, we sent it to an email drop which is now full and can't accept any more emails because none of the new people ever checked it. We're talking at least 600 sites nationwide that's been sending emails to this email address for over a month because that's what we're supposed to do. It's been about a month since a crap ton of the old compliance team quit, so the new people don't even know about that email. Do you think they ever sent out a message saying, hey, so this is where you need to send your stuff now? Nope. Freak them. We have a Teams call tomorrow with one of the new heads. I can hardly wait. I got my own emails as proof my crap was sent. Our next story is all you can eat. Many years ago, over 20, my wife and I kept a boat at a lake near our home. The marina had a restaurant that had an all-you-can-eat fried catfish on the menu. These catfish were whole and just about the size of a grown man's hand. We'd been eating there 3 or 4 times a month for the past 3 years. I held the record of 17 catfish consumed, and Pete, the owner/cook, always said that I was maxed out and could never better my score. Now comes the malicious compliance. Wife and I had 10 family and friends visiting for my birthday and we all went to the marina for dinner. I boldly and loudly announced that I was going to beat my record of 17 catfish. Obviously, Pete overheard my braggadocio and took our orders. A lot of beer was being consumed. Pete brought out 9 platters, turned to me and said, "Beat your record and everything is on the house." With cheers all around, Pete then said, "Fail, and you have to give Gail and Debbie a 25% tip." Everyone, including me, agreed and just knew we were getting a free meal. Pete went back to the kitchen and brought out my first catfish. That sucker weighed 5 pounds. I couldn't even eat the one. Everyone laughed and we did have a great time. And yes, the girls got their tip and I never messed with Pete again. Pete and I remained friends until he passed away last year. He never tired of telling this story. This is like one of those situations where you buy something in bulk and one of the items out of the rest are just crazily big compared to the normal size. It's kind of a sad comparison, but I used to love pizza rolls when I was a kid, and as a kid having the pizza rolls, every once in a while there would just be a gargantuan jumbo-sized one in the middle of the bag. I'm just imagining he had this bulk catfish order and one of them ended up being this massive 5-pound fish, just waiting for OP to try it. DCIV commented, "I bet Pete had an inkling you had family in town and noodled a few 5-pounders just in case, and it took only the one. Regardless, I so appreciate the retelling of what clearly was a memory for so many fine folks." Our next story is, "My place is in the shop?" Okay. So I, 31-year-old female, have worked in the automotive industry for a long time, and I've worked my butt off to prove myself to be a competent mechanic. I do brakes, transmission work, engine swaps, whatever's needed of me that day, and I'll help out the counter guys when they get backed up. I was helping the guys up front because they were backed up, and I was waiting for a part to come in, so I didn't really have anything else to do. My boss comes out and tells me, "Your place is in the shop, get out of the office." Okay, I go back into the shop and sit down while I wait for the part I need. Fast forward a week later, the front guys are slammed and I'm looking for something to do, but I'm in the shop, where my place is. My boss came out and asked if I'd help out. I replied with, "No, my place is back here in the shop. I'm following orders. You'll get caught up," and start sweeping in the back. The other techs thought I was in the right, but my boss wrote me up for failing to follow orders. I'm confused. I stayed in my place. Yeah, I think this is one of those unfortunate situations where you just have to accept getting yanked around by the boss. I know it makes no sense, but I want you in the back only. I know it makes no sense that I now want you in the front, but I want you in the front now. And hopefully HR doesn't overhear me only saying collectively those two phrases. Luminous Grew commented, "Can you come help out? Is a request, not an order." I'd have grilled him a little more and make him explicitly retract his earlier instructions. If you tell a mechanic, "Your place is in the shop, get out of the office," and then suddenly realize you need their help in the office, you'd better come ready to eat crow. I don't know what all these other commenters are in about. I certainly hope you didn't sign off on the write-up. OP responded saying, "I didn't sign the write-up, so now we have to have a conversation with his boss about how to proceed. However, there is a video with sound that catches everything in the shop and the office. So we'll see what happens." Our next story is, "Forced to participate?" Okay. A few years ago, my colleagues and I attended a training course. Part of it was communication, more theoretical than practical. The thing is, before this job, I taught communication, among other things, for several years at a nursing school. That's why I just sat there quietly during that part of the training course. I didn't want to ruin this part of the training for my colleague or the course leader. During the short introduction round, I mentioned that I taught communication, and that's why I was holding back. Apparently, the course leader didn't like that. She asked for participation, and I said that I didn't want to mess up her lesson because I probably already knew what she was getting at. She then said something like, "If you don't participate, you won't pass the training course." She then went too far with the sentence, "My course is very advanced, you can't do that." Okay, if you have to. She had already written the letters S and E on the board, the standard beginning for the classic blackboard picture for Schultz von Thun's 4 ears model. Her last comment made me no longer want to be nice. Should I go to the blackboard or join in for my seat? With a triumphant smile, she pointed to the blackboard. Well, I basically explained the model from memory the way I used to in my lessons, including the standard example, easier to understand examples, and hints as to where the difficulties in understanding this model lie. After that, she explained at length to everyone that everything I had said was nonsense because I had not used the correct technical term for an ear, but a different word that meant the same thing. Somehow the rest of the communication part was very monologue-like because my colleagues were no longer interested in their lessons. I don't know if this reeks more of they didn't just want to be upstaged and come across as if they know more than OP actually does, or if they want to somehow try to justify you really do need this course, what I'm teaching is very useful. Either way, it turned out to be a pretty rough look for them to criticize OP for just using an alternative verb. Dr. Grabbutt commented, "What a dumb trainer. I am literally a corporate trainer, and I love it when people already know things. That makes it easier for me, and I can just invite their experience into the conversation to enhance it. In fact, a good trainer knows that the most memorable training is when the people in the course can give insights to each other. Step 1 of any training, don't have an ego and think you know everything. A great course trainer is a facilitator of conversation, not a knowledge vault." Our next story is $140, that's expensive for an oil change. Take it out, put the old oil back. I bet. $140 seems steep, but keep in mind this was a 22-year-old Chevy SUV. Not only did it need an oil change, but it's already suffering from bad piston slap, which we documented. It got dropped off for an overnight oil change, and first thing in the morning, the customer showed up for his truck. When he heard the price, he got upset and said he wasn't paying that and to put the old oil back. He doesn't care how, after explaining it wasn't possible. He gave off huge expletive-y vibes, and judging from the condition of his truck, he's always been a jerk. When he left, I had a talk with the other tech, and he was confused about how we're putting the old oil back when it was so bad it looked like burnt oil. I told him we're gonna pump the top of the waste oil enough to fill his truck. All the waste oil is mixed synthetic. Axle and standard oil is mixed with waste, and generally not a good idea to reuse it, but he insisted when he said he didn't care how. We put his old filter back and put desert heat aged old oil back in it, and as added measure, one of the techs he ticked off put axle grease on top of his catalytics. Doesn't damage anything or smoke, it smells freaking horrible when it's heated. We put his truck down and put it outside and gave the keys to the owner of the shop. When he came to get his truck, the owner was outside waiting and told him not to come back again. The boss is still worried we might be on the hook for his engine if it blows, and we showed him all the paperwork and the documented piston slapping. We figure his truck might last another year at best if he changed the oil by now. Edit for those wondering about the breakdown in cost: 12 quarts of T6, 70-ish, you keep the extra. Oil stabilizer, $10. Filter, $12. Oil plug, $12, only part he left with for free, plus labor and disposal fees. I will say, I had the dreaded get oil changed now thing pop up on my dashboard, and I went and got my oil changed recently, and it's not a whole lot of fun. My favorite part is when they turn that little screen around and say, hey, would you like any of these other optional things that you need to do that you are 50,000 miles over apparently and you've not done ever as far as we know? Our baseline option only costs an additional $79.99. No thanks, I might do that next time. Revenant commented, had a friend who worked at Valvoline some 10 years back, and I went to pick him up and hung out in the waiting room. This old dude comes back to get his car and went ballistic at the $50 price tag. I won't pay it, put my old oil back. Sir, drained oil is placed in a barrel with all other used oil for disposal. We can't do that. He says, I don't care, put it back. Put it back, I said. At this point, I'm trying so hard to not bust out laughing at this old fart. My friend is trying desperately not to laugh after seeing me in the room shaking uncontrollably, and the manager walks in and tells the guy if he doesn't pay and leave, they'll call the cops. Finally, the guy pays and throws a giant fit yelling at everyone while he gets to his car, which he peels out into a busy intersection and slams into a truck. I've never been in a room so loud from laughter, and not one of us felt all that sympathetic whatsoever. OP responded saying, that's pretty much how we deal with the old people. My boss is old, and he even said just do it their way so we can rub it in their face later. Our next story is, want precise details? Will do. I was thinking if I had any malicious compliance stories, and then I remembered this one. It was about 8 months ago, and I'd gotten permission to leave site. I work security to grab my food order, put it down on my shift report. Permission granted, went to get food order, where I got food and time back. I get it sent back saying that they need more detail. So, me telling you I had permission, where I went and time gone isn't enough? Okay. So I looked at the precise details of the walk and put it in. Walked south on Southwest 3rd for 200 feet. Turned west and walked 350 feet on West Main Street. Arrived at restaurant. You get the idea. I had put another 10 or so lines in so they had the precise course I took to the taco place as well as my travel back. They never asked for details about me getting food again. Does anybody in the comments even have an idea of like what more specifically they wanted here? Like were they just trying to fish for any possible way to say that OP was wrong? Do they not believe OP could have seriously have taken X amount of minutes to go pick up a taco at the taco place and get back, that they needed some kind of like food break time audit? TechNod commented, you could have gone into real depth about getting the permission. How did you get permission? Verbal, radio, phone, email? What was the exact wording? How was the tone? How much time was spent on this activity? Management needs to know. Our next story is, served malicious compliance by an 8-year-old. We were in a semi-enclosed plaza with a planting area in the middle. My son was instructed by my wife that the boundaries of using his scooter board were going around the plantation and from its furthest point to where we were standing, circles. Time passed and he was instructed that this was his final roundabout. Son did not do a roundabout but just rode it on one side of the plaza for a while before coming back. Kids are like really crappy, immature lawyers. You give them a rule set, and they'll do their best to try to find the best loophole possible. Aaron Core commented, "Our 3-year-old was throwing rocks into the sea because he liked the splash. This summer, there were a lot of people at the beach, so I told him, you can't throw them or you'll hit someone. You can pick it up, look at it, and then drop it." He picked one up, stretched his arm as far as possible, and dropped it. "Is this dropping?" I reply, "Yes." He smiled and proceeded to hold every rock as high as possible to drop it with a big splash. He found the line of throwing rocks without technically throwing rocks. Our next story is, I bit my dental hygienist. So this morning I went to my dentist's office to have a root planning, which is where a dentist numbs your mouth and a dental hygienist cleans under your gums. At some point, the dental hygienist had asked me to close my mouth, and I closed my mouth halfway. She got annoyed and told me again to close my mouth. I closed it almost all the way. She gasped and barked at me, "Close it!" The reason why I didn't close it all the way was because she was holding my bottom lip with a mirror on a stick and her pinky was between my teeth. But I thought to myself, okay, if you insist on yelling at me to close my mouth, I will. So I closed my mouth and bit her pinky. She then yelled and shook her hand in pain. I guess that's a good lesson for the hygienist to learn that not everybody has the muscle movement in their lips to necessarily close their mouth while also having a digit in between their teeth holding their teeth open. Or not even necessarily just the muscle movement to be able to close your lips, but enough lip to close your lips. PokePuppy51 commented, "Similar thing happened when I was a little kid, under 10. Dentist was trying to get x-rays or something. She told me, bite down, but don't bite my finger. So I just bit down and bit her finger because as a child, I didn't know how to move my mouth or jaw to accommodate her. When I bit her, she instinctively smacked me in the face. She never said anything about it after that, and I never told my mom because at that age, I'd already learned that adults can hit you if they want, and you can't stop them." Oof, sorry. Totally relived that after reading the title. Our next story is, you can't put a cashier's check on a credit card? Watch me. Back in the late 1990s, I was doing my banking at Solomon Smith Barney, which had a unique credit card. It wasn't a normal credit card or a debit card, it was a true credit card that wouldn't let you spend more than what you had in your checking account. This meant the money was earmarked but not deducted until the due date. One day, I needed a cashier's check for $1,500 and went to a branch of my personal bank. Rhymes with Bells Fargo, across town, not Solomon Smith Barney. I had to go to the customer service desk and requested a cashier's check, planning to pay with my Solomon Smith Barney credit card. The lady at the desk, who was not particularly kind, snapped at me saying, "You can't put a cashier's check on a credit card?" I understood her reasoning, but her attitude was unnecessary. Desperate to get the cashier's check, I argued a bit, but she was adamant and almost seemed to enjoy my predicament. Then she asked if there was anything else she could help with. Cue malicious compliance. I slid my credit card back to her and asked for a cash advance of $1,500. Back then, they used the old manual credit card imprint machines, so she had to go through the tedious process of imprinting my card, getting the paperwork approved, and doling out the cash. Once I had the $1,500 and 100 bills in my hand, she asked if there was anything else she could do. I said yes, I need a cashier's check for $1,500. She started to repeat her earlier refusal but stopped mid-sentence when she realized I now had the cash. Dumbfounded, she had no choice but to process my cashier's check. I walked out with a check in hand, feeling very satisfied with outsmarting her and getting what I needed despite her initial refusal. It's a story I've cherished for decades. Edit, I'm amazed that this story has changed from a minor malicious compliance to a discussion about the terms of my Solomon Smith Barney credit card that was tied to my brokerage checking account. Some people have questioned whether or not I understand the difference between a debit and a credit card. Oh, I do. I also have a good memory. I remember how cool this card was. I know how a credit card advances money with exorbitant cash advance fees that you are liable to pay back by a certain day each month. I know that you pay interest if you don't pay off your balance in full. I know that you pay a late charge if you don't pay your minimum on the due date. versus a debit card. The money is taken out of your account, ACH, immediately. Enter this cool card. Never interest or late charges because the credit card company pulled the money from your checking account once a month on the due date. Although that money was still in the checking account earning interest, it wasn't available for withdrawal and was not part of the available balance. Worked as an ATM card but with a limit. I don't remember how much, something around $800. But it also worked as a card that I could get a cash advance, and back then, there was no cash advance fee. Yes, I know it's hard to believe, but it's true, and it was the nice people at my Solomon Smith Barney bank that told me about this trick. Again, it was in the 90s. The limit on cash advance was higher than that of the ATM limit. I think it was about a $2,000 limit, but I don't remember exactly. This credit card also offered reward points. I used the points to get a Bose Wave radio and 2 round-trip airline tickets to Lisbon, Portugal. I've never heard of a debit card that offered reward points. So yes, I know this card had unusual rules and rewards, but it was the 90s and Solomon Smith Barney was a brokerage house, not a bank. So this account had unusual perks. I miss this account. If it was still available, I would have one, and this wasn't a debit card. This was a true credit card. It offered everything that a credit card did, including reward points. I've never heard of a debit card that had reward points. Thank you to everyone who took time to respond. You know, this story and the talk of the credit card has me reminiscing a little bit. For a long time, I mainly used a PayPal debit card and it actually had a cashback reward. I think it was generally like 1% on applicable purchases or something like that, but at least it was something. And I kind of just really appreciated the way that, you couldn't overspend. There's no racking up debt because it just uses what's in your bank account. At some point, they changed it though, and now you can only use it if you pre-charge your PayPal account. Before that, you could just use it on whatever purchase and it would just take it out of your bank account. It went from my main go-to card to just immediately being worth just chopping up in little bits and pieces. Valpo1996 commented, "It's like the story of the old lady that goes to the bank. She wants to withdraw $50. The bank teller says any withdrawal less than $200 has to be by the ATM. She doesn't know how to use the ATM, so she withdraws $200 and then immediately deposits $150 cash back into the account. Those kinds of rules are just stupid." Free Tetsuko commented, "I came back to the US from Spain as a young man with not much money. I had about $25 in euros. I wanted the cash. So I go to my bank, also Bells Fargo, and try to exchange it. They do not exchange currencies. Okay, great. So I go to Chase next door and ask to exchange the cash. They need me to have an account. But I don't want an account, I just want to hand you my 19 euros and get my $25. They explain that they actually deposit the euros and then withdraw the cash in dollars. So I walk back across the parking lot to my bank and tell them I want to deposit the euros. No problem. I then withdraw that exact amount in dollars. It's freaking idiotic. Our next story is, you want to know when I'm moving down the hallway? Sure thing. So I'm living with my mother in a house we moved in 2-3 years ago now. Coming out of my room into the living room, you go through a hallway passing the dining and bathrooms. Well, apparently, this day I was quiet as Mum got the shock of her life turning around in the living room to see me, and the immortal words, "Can you make some noise when you leave your room so I know you're moving?" Well, for 2 years now, I've done just that. Whistling, singing, silly noises. I've been tempted to get a slide whistle. She hasn't said a word, but I can tell by her face the regret. ETA, for those bringing up the hearing loss on her part, I appreciate the concern, but it's not that. If anything, her hearing is better than mine. She can hear just fine. She does laugh about this too. If anything, she got revenge by buying me a giant cactus. I call it the Flat Earth Society. Points if you get it, but it's British. This story kind of makes me laugh because my mom had the exact same issue whenever I was around, not necessarily walking down a hallway or anything, but if I walked into a room and she's there and she doesn't immediately see you, it doesn't even matter the sound you make in her general periphery, she is going to freak out and scream. It was funny as a teen, I would walk into the room, she wouldn't notice me, and I would just go, and she would just start screaming. I guess I must have been the fart burglar. Jealous Guidance 4902 commented, "Get a recording of the style of a boxing match voice announcing your name. And coming down the hall is Blade of Chaos." Our next story is, acknowledge Jesus' presence over all of us? Sure. I'll mention him. Was at a housewarming party at my wife's sister's this past weekend. My in-laws' boomer/far-right leaning friends were there preaching and proselytizing as usual, to everyone's dismay. My band provided live music, more of an impromptu jam session as opposed to a rehearsed set. Boomer dude, Kip, grabs the mic from my mic stand, any other time, place, or setting, and my foot is on his chest, and proceeds to pray over everyone right as we were about to start the first song. After his prayer, he points his index finger at me assertively and then rather loudly instructs me to acknowledge Jesus' presence over us. Right, why would I not comply? On drums, give it up for Jesus Jesse Ramirez. Emphasizing the Jesus pronunciation, Kip lunges forward to grab the mic again, but Jesse counts off the song, Billy Joel's You May Be Right, prompting Kip to back off, stunned. Kip's wife escorts him out while he's screaming and shaking his fist at me repeatedly. Didn't see Kip and his wife for the rest of the evening, didn't ask about them, so presumably they just left. Now, I don't mind going to an event, and if the person who's hosting the event or playing the event is particularly religious, they have a moment of prayer or acknowledgement. But you know you've got a problem when you storm for the microphone to try to make sure everybody acknowledges Jesus. Like I've never seen somebody be so religiously insecure before. Everybody here acknowledges him, right? It's not just me, right? Acknowledge him. Like, what is he, Roman Reigns? But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely awesome malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.